I'm here with Councilmember Ann Kobayashi. She's the budget chair. And Councilmember Kobayashi, you've been in the middle of budget hearings this week.
Yes, we've had every day this week. We've been going over the department's budgets and reviewing them. And today was the most interesting one because we looked at the HART budget.
Now, what's the HART budget? What's HART?
Well, HART is the Hawaii Authority for Rapid Transportation. And they have a budget of $22 million.
So that's the agency that oversees the rail for people that aren't paying attention.
And last year the budget was lower. This year it's $22 million, and I'm sure next year it'll keep going up.
So what it costs so much for $22 million?
Well, $2.2 million is rent, and then they're going to have 142 employees.
But we don't have a rail yet.
Yes, I know, and they have 5 people doing PR. And if you look at the salaries, you'll understand why their budget is so high.
So they have they want to go up to 142 employees.
Positions, yes.
And where are these offices located?
In the Ali'i Tower, Ali'i Place, right in the middle of town.
Wow.
And they have 2 floors there and part of another floor. And
we'd think they would want to go to Kapolei.
Everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Kapolei would be a lot cheaper. Or I said they should look at this Mission Memorial Building. There's space in that building.
Is there mold and rats and
no,
other things like in your building?
No, they have them in the council offices.
But not in the Mission Memorial, huh?
No, not in the, or in the HART offices.
Right. So, okay, tell me about this agency. A lot of interesting information came out today about their budget. What do people make that work at HART?
Well, I think the lowest paid person is like $54,000, and it goes on up to $338,000, I guess. The architect makes $338,000.
So they actually have an architect on staff?
A planner makes $372,000.
Wow, that's quite a big salary. Is that more than you make?
I know. Yeah, definitely. And most of them make over $100,000.
So you have about 142 people making over about $100,000.
Right, and there's a configuration management specialist who makes $310,000. A contracts officer who makes $207,000. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's just such high pay.
It's a lot higher than other city agencies,
right. Oh,
correct?
Definitely. And then the head of their organization will be getting $350,000, I believe, plus bonuses and whatever else.
And they had an item in there for pest control. What's that for?
Yes, there's a... I know. I was joking that pest control is for Malia Zimmerman and Ann Kobayashi.
It's very possible. It comes in the form of a big security guard.
Yes.
So, all right. So you have this HART department, and they're trying to build this rail. But one of the issues that came up today was about the bus and handy van, and would the money from the bus and handy van be used for the rail? Because we always heard that only the general excise tax money would be used for the rail.
Exactly. They had to, they were supposed to, they have a financial plan that they submit to the federal government, to the FTA. And that plan has to be, they don't like the word strengthen. But anyway, FTA asks that they go back and look at other sources of revenue. So they included in the financial plan for the rail the monies that the city receives for handy van and bus replacement and repair. And so they are taking $10 million a year. No, $30 million a year for nearly 10 years. And that could be used for the bus. They said they won't, but they could. But in the transportation budget, it's zeroed out for all those years where we could be replacing and repairing handy vans and bus. So we said, well, what if you do take that money? How are we going to repair and replace our handy vans and buses for the next 10 years? And they said, well, they'll look at other sources. Which, does that mean property tax? I mean, what other sources?
Now, there was some kind of discussion today about, Councilmember Ikaika Anderson was asking about an ordinance that, I guess it's 2007, that said you're not allowed to use
property tax.
Right, property tax to pay for the rail.
Exactly.
But if you're actually using the bus money to pay for the rail and then the property tax to pay for the bus,
that's why he said you're trying to end run this ordinance.
Right.
And of course they are not doing that.
They said no.
According to,
Right. Okay. What
But
about?
it is. I mean, what else are you going to call it?
Right. Taking one. It's a shell game, as
It is.
I think.
You're using the the handy van monies and bus monies for rail.
Now, what about? There was a discussion about line of credit. Can you talk about
Well,
that?
that's another way that the financial plan had to be not strengthened. They don't like to use the word strengthened, but it's added to the financial plan. And this is commercial paper that the city has about, we can float about 350 million of that. And the Hart wants to add another 100 million and then have it in their financial plan that they could use this money. But they're saying, oh, but they'll share it with the rest of the city. But why are they adding another 100 million to the 350? Because that shores up the financial plan.
There was quite a bit of discussion today about new costs that the city council wasn't aware of about for the rail. And some of the council members seemed a little surprised about new costs that you might have to authorize or help get money for.
I know they as I have said over the years, there's no transparency. We find out about things after the fact. And yes, they do have many new costs. In fact, their condemnation of land went up from 90 million to 214 million. But all of these costs are going to add up to, but they say they have a contingency fund of 800 million, but it's slowly eating into that already.
So, what else about? There was a quite a bit of discussion about. Okay, you have this rail project, and you have a federal lawsuit, and you also don't have federal funding yet. You don't have the full funding agreement yet, and so the council members were asking, what about waiting until to start construction with these big pillars that are going to go up 8-foot pillars in the first line of the project? How about waiting, instead of building these pillars and maybe having to tear them down, how about waiting until you know if you have the federal money or whether the federal lawsuit's going to, who's going to win that?
Well, like anybody else would do, you don't start construction until you have the money in place. And we don't have the money in place. We did get this letter of no prejudice or whatever, which allows them to start construction using city money. And they want to use the money they have to start putting up these columns. And there's that pending lawsuit. We don't know whether we'll get 1.55 billion from the feds. And if we don't have that, we're going to have to tear those columns down.
So if you start construction, you have all this traffic and, people are inconvenienced, and then you build these columns and then you have to tear them down. I guess the council members were saying, isn't that more expensive than just waiting?
Right. Just wait until we get the full funding agreement, which is supposed to come at the end of this year. But, and, it's scary to start building all this stuff without having the money in place. I mean, already our financial plan is weak, and that's why they have to add all these other funds to strengthen it.
So, but it ended up that Toru Haramasu, who's the executive director of HART, the acting executive director, said that it's more expensive to wait rather than build the columns and tear them down. He says that you should build them. If you have to tear them down, you have to tear them down. That's still cheaper than putting everyone on the bench. Is that true?
Right. That's what he says, and that otherwise it'll be 10 million a year. The inflation rate will be costing us about 10 million a year. And it's not fair to start all these people working and then put them back on the bench.
What he said.
Thousands of people.
That's what he said, huh?
That's what he said.
Are there really thousands of people working on this project?
Well, that's what they say, although some drilling companies have called me and said there are 3 drilling companies here, and the contract went to a mainland company. So I don't know. And Saldo is a company from Italy.
And then Kiewit Pacific had said they were only going to have 350 people working on the project. So
right, and we don't know. As I say, they gave the drilling company to a mainland company, not a local company.
So maybe jobs. It's hard to say, but maybe the jobs that they've promised are not necessarily going to come to fruition. I
think we could create more jobs by repairing our schools, repairing our restroom facilities in the parks, fixing our sewers.
Now, what about, we keep hearing from the proponents of rail that, well, the people voted on this. And so they passed the rail. They wanted the steel and steel elevated rail. And we know it was about 53% voted for it. That was in 2008. But what's the response to that?
Well, at the time of the vote, the people were told that the project would cost $3.7 billion. $3.7 billion. We're at 5.2, almost 5.2. And the project was supposed to go through Salt Lake, where there are 50,000 people living. A lot of them are working. And also that it would go to the University of Hawaii. And the University of Hawaii students used to come here and argue against the project unless it went to the university. Well, it's not going there. So all the factors that the voters thought would be there are not there. The voters are not getting what they were promised.
Now, one of the questions that kept coming up today with the different council members, and I was surprised to see more council members doing what you usually do, which is really questioning the financial figures. But they were just saying, can we afford this? Can we really afford this project? And what do you think? Can we afford it?
You know, after this is finished, there's the operation and maintenance, which goes on forever. And so, and I don't really see that we have enough money just for this project. And the whole project actually is supposed to end at University of Hawaii with a spur to Waikiki. We don't have enough money. We won't even have money to reach Ala Moana, from the dirt field in Kapolei to Ala Moana, because as it goes along, the ridership too may not be as promised, and then we're going to have to subsidize more of that cost.
Now, one of the things we keep hearing on the radio, I've mentioned this, or did an interview with you before, but we keep hearing these radio ads on the
I know.
And on different stations saying, talking about the rail, and it seems like it's kind of mixed in with these union ads that are promoting the rail, but also then the city is talking about construction, and it sounds almost like wow, we've been waiting for a long time for these rail. It's almost like another promotion of the rail.
I know. Well, before the vote, the city spent $5 million of taxpayers' money to lobby for the rail, not to educate the people about the project, but to lobby for it. And now we're doing the same thing again. That's why HART has 5 PR people on their staff.
So what do you think they need 5 PR people for?
Well, to do these radio ads and whatever else, and there were all these subcontracts before that for a lot of PR people.
One of the costs was $145,000 just for the radio ads.
Just for the radio ads, and then there's another line item for $300,000 for a person to do lobbying.
Really?
Up in the state capitol, in the federal government.
To get federal funding for us, huh?
Right, to lobby with the congressional people, as if they need lobbying.
Seems like they have Senator Inouye for that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, $300,000, and we've spent that before. We've spent more than that. There was a contract for $800,000 before the project started.
Now, did you follow this controversy about the FTA and their emails, and Governor Cayetano unveiled those earlier this week?
Yes, that was so interesting. And,
some of the emails were very critical for people that might not have seen them, very critical of the rail project.
That's what the lawsuit says, that there was, we didn't look at alternatives.
Right, that was the biggest issue, right?
That was the biggest issue. And
alternatives besides
was,
rail, elevated steel on steel. Right. So what else do you think people should know about just this whole budget process, and what some of the other concerns are about the whole HART and rail situation?
Well, $22 million is going to just for the operation of HART, and we haven't even started yet. We're just not going to have enough money, and that's what worries me. Is they say they're not going to, and we may need new handy vans and buses and.
One of the things they were talking.
Where's the money going to come from?
Right, one of the taxpayers, I guess.
Exactly, and the only revenue source, the largest revenue source for the city is property tax. Mm-hmm. So do we start taxing people out of their homes?
One of the things that was mentioned today is that, speaking of buses, is that they're actually putting in new engines in the old buses to keep them going, rather than buying new buses.
I know, and I don't know whether that's cost effective, but what will happen in the next 10 years when we don't have those funds available?
So will people be able to watch more of hearings about HART on Olelo?
Definitely. We have not stopped the budget review. In fact, there are many unanswered questions. Oh. So this will continue, and we'll keep you informed, Malia, about the hearing dates.
All right. Thank you so much, Councilmember Ann Kobayashi.